is true that actually there is a benefit for reasonably high self-esteem from the point of view of mental health. There is a link between depression and low self-esteem. And I think it's quite easy to see that if every time you go into your head and you think about yourself, it's quite negative, that isn't very good for your mental health. And I'll perhaps come back to that later. But what isn't the case is that it matters for academic success. I think that people often think that somehow if you boost self-esteem, you're doing something of benefit in an academic way, but actually you're not. There hasn't been any considered research that really shows a link between academic success and self-esteem. And just a very easy way to think about this is that girls generally score lower than boys on self-esteem, yet do better academically. The same is true of Asian students as opposed to white students. This is much more complicated. Academic success is often about an academic self-concept. It's more about what Carol Dweck would talk about in terms of mindset. It's more about your parents, your family upbringing. It's these kind of things that matter for academic success, not so much self-esteem. So why am I saying this is a really important thing that people understand? Well, it's important because if you're told that self-esteem is of critical importance to young people and that all these social problems would be eradicated if we could just boost self-esteem, because that's what the proponents of self-esteem are arguing, people sit up and take notice. And that's what happened. Parents and teachers across America thought it was their job to boost their child's self-esteem, that they were doing them an incredible favor if they did that. They were laying down the foundations of a good life. Now, once you start thinking that how a child is feeling about him or herself is of fundamental importance, and that child is struggling with learning something and is frustrated and maybe annoyed with him or herself, it's very, very tempting, if you're a parent or a teacher, to jump in and say it doesn't matter and to divert them on to easier work so they can experience success, because your thinking here is if you can keep their self-esteem buoyed up, then further down the line they will reap the academic benefits from that and they will learn. That's the thinking once you start thinking that self-esteem is really important. And as Seligman has pointed out, learning anything that's worth learning is usually challenging and frustrating. So it's an essential part of the learning process, and so we are now worried by that, and we want to divert children onto easier work. Another thing that you would then do is you might prevent children failing. And the culmination of this is you reduce your standards. You reduce challenge, you take challenge out of learning, and you reduce your standards ultimately by giving people easier work for them to accomplish, to keep their feelings about themselves and their self-esteem up. Other things that you might do, and were certainly done in large measure in America, is giving false feedback. So a child does something, it's indifference and maybe not even very good, but you tell them it was awesome. It was fantastic, right? And you restrict criticism or anything that might be negative because that could be seen to be damaging to self-esteem. I can remember Carol Dweck, who's one of the world's leading psychologists now on mindset, saying that she was speaking to a sports coach in America working with young people who was demented at the fact that if he ever gave negative feedback to a youngster, their parents would be on the phone saying, "How dare you tell my child that they're doing something wrong, because you're damaging their self-esteem." And that is the knock-on effect of this kind of approach. The other thing you might do is you could give out a lot of awards for things, because again, this is about getting kids to feel really good about themselves. So we're going to give them certificates and awards for all sorts of things. Interestingly, I spoke at a parents' event not that long ago, and after my speech, a few of the mothers rushed out and they said, "We were just talking about this morning." They were in a primary, they had children in primary school. They said, "We were just talking about this morning. Our 8-year-old kids are coming back from school and they've got a certificate for being a good listener." And we don't get that. Are they not expected to be good listeners? Are you not reducing your standards by giving certificates for things that they should just be doing because it's the right thing to do? And I think that there is something there for people to ponder, because I think they're right about that. The other thing that you might do is restrict competition. We don't want to have winners and losers. We're not going to have sports days. We're not going to do these things because some people will feel bad, and we don't want that. Now, I'm not someone who is saying that we should have a lot of competition for young children, but I think that once children are over 8 or 9 or that kind of age, I think competition actually can be a boon in many ways to some kids. And we live in a competitive world that's obsessed by competitive sports, and yet we're kind of trying to eradicate it for younger children, who I think often do not even appreciate the fact that it's been done for them. So the whole point of these activities is really trying to teach children that a very important factor for them in their life is how they feel about themselves. And in fact, in America, that was the other thing that was done as part of their self-esteem boosting. They would have lots of essays where you're to write all about me or how I'm special. And at the time, some psychologists did warn that actually wasn't boosting self-esteem. It was encouraging a narcissistic self-focus.